Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Welcome to the SB Nation NFL show. This is Monday Football Monday, the premier broadcast that the SB Nation NFL show has to offer. We love, shocker alert, to talk about the NFL. And a reminder before we get started here that this show is brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code SBNNFL for a special offer when you sign up. That's code SBNNFL only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Once again, this is the SB Nation NFL show. You can watch us on the SB Nation NFL YouTube channel, the SB Nation NFL Facebook page, the SB Nation NFL Twitter page, and of course, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Look for the SB Nation NFL show, subscribe, leave a rating, write a review. It puts bread on our table, and if you don't do it, all of us are going to go hungry. But I'm not going to go hungry today. In fact, my plate is full because I am going to be joined by a fantastic cast of characters. My name is RJ Ochoa from SB Nation's Blog of the Boys. Joining me, as always, every single Monday is fantastic producer Rachel Prevet. And, of course, from SB Nation's Arrowhead Pride, Pete. Pete, happy Monday, Football Monday to you, my friend.
Hey, how's it going?
Nice. I don't know if it's obvious. I write these down. Like, I look forward to introducing you every single Monday, and I'm always excited to kind of see the joy that hits your face. But I was kind of hating on you a little bit before we started recording, which maybe took the wind out of your sails.
No, you did a little bit, and now we have a guest who I don't particularly like, and obviously there's something going on wrong with my camera. I don't know why it's so zoomed out, and I'm trying to figure that out as we go here. But the camera has been an issue, even dating back to the Ross Tucker podcast. And so,
that's right. Well, I understand you're sore because Ross picked you last of his SB Nation NFL Monday Football Monday favorites, and so when it comes to the MF double MVP, we'll see who walks away with today's.
Not that I have a feud brewing with Ross Tucker, but I did notice he doesn't even follow any of the hosts. I mean, He's got less than 100 followers. He said how fond he was of you. He doesn't even follow you on Twitter, RJ.
Look, I mean, that's not everything in the world, Pete. I started a TikTok last week. I've been moving and grooving and hustling over there. So, I mean, maybe Ross, I haven't checked. Maybe he follows me there. You just, there's a lot of avenues and a lot of platforms for discussion.
There's a ton of money to be made on the talk. If you go viral, RJ, I feel like maybe, this SB Nation can be something that you leave in the rearview mirror.
Never. No, bury me in SB Nation. You mentioned we have a guest. Of course, the 2022 NFL Draft was last week, and we're here to discuss our favorite groups, our least favorite groups, kind of everything in between. But the Vogue pick, the sexy pick, the just everyone agrees they dominated the draft is the team that dominated the Kansas City Chiefs in week 3 of last season. I am, of course, talking about my Baltimore Ravens, his Baltimore Ravens. Joining us, the manager, editor-in-chief, head honcho, the all-time GOAT from Baltimore Beatdown, SB Nation's home for Baltimore Ravens content. It is Kyle Barber. KB, thank you so much for gracing us with your astute presence.
I am grateful for such an intro. As Pete just says, "Oh, what's up?" I shower in it, I bask in it, and I appreciate the energy, RJ. And I'm going to do my best to deliver it right back for you. Hi, Pete.
The last time Kyle was here, he brought a plate, and it was after.
To be clear, he wasn't literally here for that. He just had a presence on the show. That was a pre-recorded video. How the sausage gets made. That wasn't him actually like one-on-one doing that to you.
I just don't forget things, and so
you forgot what it was, so you clearly do. Not a live appearance.
That's why I have you, RJ. I have you to remind me and kind of tell me how it is, and that's why we keep you around.
How you remind me, a great song by Nickelback.
I'm unforgettable, so that's why you don't, you remember that part.
Kyle Unforgettable Barber is what we call him.
Kyle Unforgettable Barber, something like that. We'll get there one way or another. Kyle, we want to start talking about our favorite draft classes. I do have the Kansas City Chiefs in my 5, and here's a bit of a spoiler, or not spoiler, but just kind of peek behind the curtain for everyone, including you, Kyle. We have a Google Doc where we list show notes for this show. It's filled with
We
my selections for favorite draft classes, least favorite draft classes, ones I have questions about. Rachel monitors this and checks it because she's a fantastic producer and gets all the appropriate notes necessary. Not a single piece of input from Pete, just so we're all aware here. He's very selfish with his notes.
You gotta send me that link. I'll have to get that going for next show.
Just consider that, Kyle, because you're gonna have a vote for today's MF double MVP. You and Rachel gonna do the math on figuring out who wins it. But my favorite draft class, shocker here, not a unique pick by any means. The Baltimore Ravens walked away with 1,000 first-round picks, but walked away without Marquise Hollywood Brown. It was a crazy, hectic weekend, Kyle, I imagine. There was speculation that A.J. Brown would get traded. He obviously did, and Deebo Samuel, who did not. The Hollywood Brown thing kind of came out of nowhere. Then he said, well, it's kind of been in the works for a month. Your thoughts on the trade, the overall weekend? I mean, are the Ravens so much better? I think they are going to be better no matter what, but this infuses a lot of talent to their roster.
The phrase that every NFL team after the draft is, we got better this weekend. And while that's true for most teams because you have an influx of talent, no matter which team you are, I believe the Ravens are true in that sentence. They drafted Kyle Hamilton, arguably the best player in this draft, with number 14 overall. Great player, great name too, like you said, of course. And also landed Tyler Linderbaum, the best center prospect in about the last 5 years, with the number 25 pick. They acquired that from trading, like you said, Marquise Hollywood Brown to the Arizona Cardinals for the number 23 overall pick, jumped back a couple spots, and that's where they got Linderbaum. Overall, the trade was definitely a shock. I was in the media room at the Baltimore Ravens facilities when it happened. We were all writing up about Kyle Hamilton, and then suddenly the trade comes across our screen, and Hollywood is already in Arizona at their draft party. So this had clearly been in the works for a while. It had been agreed to in a while, but the Ravens didn't want that being released earlier because they didn't want other teams to have an advantage with the information as to whether or not they would want to capitalize on having a new need at wide receiver and going and maybe drafting one of those players that ultimately did go too quickly when the wide receiver run occurred in the first round.
Pete, your thoughts? I mean, Kansas City had a great draft class, but it was peanuts compared to what Baltimore did.
I disagree. I think a lot of people have been pretty high on the Kansas City Chiefs draft class, and I think for good reason. I think they got a little bit lucky, too, Chiefs-wise, and maybe you could say this about Ravens, where the picks that they made were kind of fitting the value at positions of need, and I think sometimes these drafts come with a little bit of luck. And I also, I've noticed that everyone is so high on the Chiefs and Ravens, and a counterpoint of that is they had a lot of picks, so when you have so many picks, and like for the Chiefs, for example, what they did in the final day is they said we have all these picks. We're gonna
this is about the Ravens, Pete.
But I'm saying we're just going to continue to draft defensive backs, and you look at the Ravens and they have a safety, a center, an edge, and then all those fourth rounders that Peter King wrote about in his Football Morning in America. When you have that many picks, you can really, I think, fill needs. And right after the draft, everyone feels like they're going to be a day one contributor. And so I just think the sheer number of picks helps your post-draft grade, and you see later down the line whether or not that comes to fruition.
I think that could be part of it, but also they acquired those picks by being a savvy franchise. They had 6 fourth-round picks, the most in the fourth round ever. It was truly a spectacle. Even in the media when we were all kind of looking around at each other, like, are we really going to have to write up 6 picks in the fourth round on day 3? It became a little bit of a joke because you weren't expecting them to actually go through with it. You thought maybe they would trade up on day 2, grab another third rounder, or if they liked somebody that was falling again, they could go in and grab them. But that's not what happened. They drafted 6 players. They got 2 tight ends. They got Daniel Falale, who is a mountain of an offensive tackle who is getting a lot of links to Orlando Brown Jr., former Ravens, current Chief right now at right tackle, a guy that sounds like he wants to play right tackle, which is kind of nice as opposed to the individual who left Baltimore to go play left tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. But overall, they landed a lot of talented players, and I wouldn't necessarily agree that the Ravens got players that filled positional need. The Ravens have their safety depth. They signed Marcus Williams to a 5-year, $70 million contract. They needed a center fielder, free safety, and then with the first pick in the draft, they get Kyle Hamilton. They already have a full safety room with Chuck Clark, Williams, Brandon Stevens, and Tony Jefferson, and also Geno Stone. But this is the kind of player that can allow them to operate with more freedom with personnel groups, dime packages, things of the like, which the draft kind of signified that the Ravens are wanting to operate under the 2019 offense and defensive system. They're wanting to get back to a strong rushing attack and utilizing multiple tight end sets. That's why they double dipped at tight end with Charlie Collar and Isaiah Likely. They got a center prospect, the one, as I mentioned, one of the best of the last 4 or 5 years in terms of prospects. And they want to be able to build an offensive line surrounding Lamar Jackson. They want to be able to run the football and also operate with dime packages, which they were the 4th most used in 2019 for the Baltimore Ravens in a league-wide perspective. So they want to be able to match up against different oppositions, personnel groups with tight ends, and face off against people like Travis Kelce, who is a matchup nightmare. And now they can have, a different tandem of safeties operating to attempt to slow down tight ends, which kind of give them fits over the last couple of years.
You can't slow down Travis Kelce. We know that. I do want to ask you about this little note.
You can outrun him, though, with Mark Andrews and his production.
That's right. I do like Manders. Rachel would tell you that. With Calvin Austin, I thought this was an interesting point of Peter King's article. I don't know if you've seen it this morning, but the Ravens were all set to take Calvin Austin out of Memphis, runs a 4.32 like Hollywood Brown. And then he ends up going to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Did you see this little nugget that the Ravens were high on him? And what is your reaction to that?
I did see it. It's actually the lead story on BaltimoreRavens.com's article that I write every Monday,
Nice.
Late for work. Yes, the Steelers did, in a phrase, poach a wide receiver that the Ravens were interested in. Calvin Austin definitely was a player that we all kind of had on our proverbial boards, expecting them to go get a wide receiver after trading Hollywood Brown. They're in decent shape with the receiving room, and I include Mark Andrews as a receiver just because that is a pass catcher. He is incredible with his playmaking ability, so that's definitely the way to go about it. But yeah, you wanted to see them go after wide receiver, address the need that they just sent away in that first round wide receiver who just had 1,000 yards. Hollywood's the first wide receiver for the Ravens to have 1,000 yards since Mike Wallace in 2016. So
former
it's
Steeler.
been a while. Exactly.
Interesting, who was the last one before Mike Wallace? Is it Anquan Bolden?
I think it might have been Torrey Smith. It could have been maybe Kamar Aiken, but those are not big star names. And the Ravens have always had a bit of a struggle when it comes to passing individual statistics. But They also had Mark Andrews that did it, of course, in this season, but that is under the tight end position, not wide receiver. So it's a little bit of a difference. But by sending that away, you wanted them to address the need. And Calvin Austin seemed exactly like the kind of guy that they wanted to get. And as you mentioned, Peter King was in the draft room for the 4th round of the Ravens day 3 draft. And they ended up missing out on Calvin Austin by a single pick instead.
The Cowboys missed out on Charlie Kohler by a single pick. So thanks for that, Kyle.
You're
very
welcome.
upset. I do love the Ravens class. Again, it's a very popular opinion. I think it's interesting, though. I kind of think that it's part of the headliners. I think everybody looks at Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum and views those values as insane. Kind of like an album where the first 3 tracks are awesome and then it just kind of fades, like Ocean Avenue by Yellow Card. Kyle followed me on Instagram last week, everybody, so I'm getting to know him on a deeper level. He'll find out that I'm a fan of alternative rock from the early 2000s, but. It's obviously everything, there's so many, every fan base is now questioning every mock drafter that had players they got lower than they ultimately were drafted. And I thought something that was a little bit interesting, just to kind of confirm priors or judge my own priors. Arif Hassan does a great job with the consensus board over at The Athletic. And based on overall return on investment relative to consensus board, the Baltimore Ravens had the 5th best draft in the NFL. The Kansas City Chiefs actually had the 3rd. The Carolina Panthers had the 1st. And some of that is the positional value of quarterbacks. Obviously, the Panthers walking away with Matt Corral, and that affects the Falcons draft class and things like that. But there are some different value perspectives that don't feel like the Ravens had the unquestioned best draft in the NFL. Do you feel like that's a fair argument?
Yeah, of course. Everybody feels like they have the best draft, every single year. And you see the big number of first round picks that went to the Ravens, that you went to the Jets, and you immediately assume, wow, these guys have 3 Pro Bowlers right away. They're going to jump in. They're going to make a name for themselves. But in reality, we all know that draft grades are exciting and fun to discuss, and you can see and make arguments for the value. But these players have to develop, and not only develop into starting caliber players, but beyond that. And it doesn't always pan out, sadly. Not all 262 picks get to go to the Pro Bowl every year. I also noticed, I think it was in the article that you mentioned from Hassan, that a lot of the value has to do with, if you have more picks, like Pete Sweeney mentioned, your value is going to be higher because you had more picks to go with. And it also didn't calculate the trade that the Ravens sent away in acquiring that value to get Tyler Linderbaum, because they just sent away their only 1,000-yard receiver.
Yeah, I have a question for you just about the weekend in general, because this seemed to be a celebration of the Ravens, especially as the grades came out. But you also had on night one Lamar Jackson very publicly freaking out about this trade, it seemed like, and then not being so happy with the center pick. Where does that stand in your eyes at this point?
So Lamar did comment that it wasn't having to do with Tyler Linderbaum being the pick. He quote tweeted that and said, it has nothing to do with my new center, but it had to do with the Marquise Hollywood Brown trade, which is also a little strange because he knew it. After day one, we interviewed. We had an opportunity to talk with Ravens general manager Eric DeCosta, head coach John Harbaugh, and director of player personnel Joe Ortiz. And they all said that they had talked with Lamar throughout this entire process. They also said that Hollywood Brown requested a trade in year 2 of his deal. So not at this offseason, but the previous one. And they did not send him away, obviously. He played with the Ravens, and then he had over, I believe 90 catches, 1,000 yards, and he still wasn't happy. He wanted to be more of the focal point of the offense, is what it sounds like, and he wanted more targets. It might have been as well. It wasn't exactly it. But yeah, Lamar Jackson's a WTF on Twitter after the trade went down, but he most certainly knew about it because Hollywood said that he had spoken to Lamar after year 2 and his frustrations, and then again after year 3 and his frustrations, and throughout the trade process. And once the trade was completed, Lamar's, it sounds like, is acting as if he didn't know about this publicly, but he most certainly did, because Hollywood Brown is one of his closest friends. They drive to the facilities or the games every day together. They were always in the same vehicle on that. So it seems a little bit like a public facade of, oh man, I had no idea this was happening, when in reality it most certainly was informed from the Ravens front office that they were in talks and conversations about it the entire time.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but like, that's very odd. RJ, like, isn't that odd? You can talk about this, RJ, but that seems very, very weird to me.
Well, it seems very dramatic. And I also, like, on one hand, empathize with, like, it was his first opportunity to sort of, like, publicly express any feelings about it, given the, like, kind of, tight-lipped nature of the trade. But there's a lot of walking back happening publicly by stars in the NFL. Lamar Jackson, although he hasn't technically walked it back. Sean McVay with the Cole Strange thing, and then the next day, like, literally just like bowing down to Bill Belichick and apologizing as profusely as he could, which is what Pete should do to you, Kyle Barber, because you're kind enough to take time to join us here on Monday Football Monday. Before you leave, if you could cast your vote for MF Double MVP, Monday Football Monday Most Valuable Player, and explain your reasoning.
I absolutely have to go with Rachel here.
Okay.
Because Rachel is the GOAT. It makes the most sense. She helps put these shows together. And though RJ has that energy and brings it and delivers it, and Sweeney has the cool, calm nature to settle in every Monday with you, I'm laughing in the car every morning that I listen to this show. I listen to some of the other SB Nation shows. Content here,
like,
by
there
the
are
way,
good ones, like on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. They're great.
Sadly, I have to listen to Tuesdays because they have enough hot takes that I have to contribute that to BaltimoreRavens.com when they're out of place and say that Lamar Jackson might be the 7th best quarterback in the AFC and all that. So that's definitely hit the front page, BaltimoreRavens.com on Late for Work. But also, quick things. One, RJ, you can't claim to be a Cowboys and Bills and Ravens guy. You got to have one AFC, one NFC. And I know you too frequently are like, my Bills, the Buffalo Bills, my Bills, Josh Allen. You can't do that and also be like, my Baltimore. You can't do it. I can't allow that. I can't allow that.
If I have to choose, I'm choosing the Bills. I'm really sorry about this, but the Ravens thing is because of the Oddcast, because they hate on them so irrationally. I've come to their defense, so I sort of feel like they're knight in shining armor. Like maybe we're not like together, but like I'm here to defend the Ravens from an objective standpoint, and I feel like I'm the only one ready to do that. So that's that's where the my comes from. But like I'm in love with the Bills as far as AFC teams.
You've been a perennial Chiefs hater, and then this offseason now you're turning your back on the rest of the AFC West. So not only are you a Bills and Ravens guy, you also have claimed in recent weeks to somehow also be a Chiefs guy. These might be the last.
I also hate the Colts.
The
like just to be clear, like let's get all my emotions out.
I was gonna say, at least thankfully, RJ has stuck to the script of loathing the Indianapolis
that's
team
his least favorite
and also the Chargers squad.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So good job on that consistency.
Kyle, last thing, the question I asked you a little while ago tore us apart. Although you choosing Rachel helps mend us back together. If you could, in your final thoughts here, explain why Monday Football Monday is so much better than the Oddcast, we would appreciate that.
Yeah, that would be good.
The best way to describe it, and I've mentioned it multiple times already, is RJ Ochoa's energy is something that you do need on a Monday morning.
That's right.
If you're working that traditional Monday through Friday or not, you need some energy to perk you up because everybody around you is going to be like, oh boy, it's Monday. RJ never delivers the low energy Mondays, and it's something that I value. Pete Sweeney comes on here. He keeps the show level headed. He delivers some solid information, and it's worth giving a 5-star review to this show. I tell you what, fans, I know you're listening. I know you're able to do so. Put the 5 stars on there. Talk about how great these two are. And you can even talk about how you're not a big fan of RJ Ochoa's sidekick on the NFC East mixtape.
That's right.
Brandon Lee Gouton. So thank you guys so much for having me on. I'm going to do the quick plug for myself now. Definitely follow me at Kyle P. Barber. Check in on BaltimoreBeatdown.com for my work and all things Baltimore Ravens. I have a wonderful staff that I'm thrilled with their draft coverage. We produced a litany of articles over the last 3 days, and we're only going to have more as the draft process ends. And finally, I am on BaltimoreRavens.com. Check out my Late for Work series every Monday morning. Thank you guys so much for having me on. I love doing this.
The all-time GOAT, my second favorite chess player of all time behind myself, of course, Kyle P. Barber. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. One love, my friend.
One love.
Baltimore Pete. Barber. I didn't realize he was on Ravens.com. Late for work.
You know what, Pete? It's a really terrible thing to say with him still lurking in the background because he shouts out the SB Nation NFL show frequently on BaltimoreRavens.com.
Yeah.
So great job.
That's
great job. After he just showered us with love and affection and praise.
Baltimore Barber. Does he live in Baltimore? He must, I guess, if he was at the Ravens facility.
Pete, I don't know Kyle's social security number or
Does he live in Maryland?
I'm not invasive like that, but I will tell you that we constantly have a chess game going, he and I, with the chess app, and I was pretty confident in my skills when we first started, but Kyle has bested me more often than I would like to admit. Just like the Ravens have bested the Chiefs more often than you'd like to admit.
Some people play chess, Brett Veach, Andy Reid. Some people play checkers. Mike McCarthy, Jerry Jones.
Nice. Anyway, Brett Veach had a shout out last week on Monday Football Monday with Ross Tucker, your boy. Anyway, let's move on, Pete. I mentioned it. I have a list of favorite draft classes. I do have the Kansas City Chiefs on there. My top 5. I'm interested in hearing yours. Number 1, Baltimore Ravens. Number 5, Kansas City Chiefs. So sandwiching them in between. It pains me to say number 2, the Philadelphia Eagles. It pains me even more to say number 3, the New York Giants. And number 4, start spreading the news. Pete hit us with that Frank Sinatra, beautiful baritone voice, the New York Jets, Jets.
Yeah, I really liked the Jets class. I thought they had a really nice draft, and
There's one thing holding it back, but go ahead.
No, it's a team that really needed, I think, in order to come sort of out of the rubble, in a sense, to get to like a team that can maybe push to be around 500, maybe better than that, just depending on the development of Wilson. But I really enjoyed the Gardner pick in the beginning there when seemingly he fell. I mean, this is a guy that has so much confidence. He's been telling us the best pick in the entire draft, and then to go and fill the positions of need. And they basically stole Breece Hall. Everyone thought that he would.
See, I disagree.
Buffalo Bill, and
disagree.
Now he goes in division to the New York Jets.
How do you say that they stole him when the Bills passed on him? I mean, like, that's not stealing. Like, I would say, like, you could say that Philadelphia Eagles stole Jordan Davis from the Baltimore Ravens. I don't think the Jets stole Breece Hall. Everybody's passed on Breece Hall.
Yeah, so they stole Breece Hall from your Bills, and I'm eager to see what he does for the New York Jets. I also thought, and you had mentioned the Giants, but I think this is.
But hang on, no, because I have a thought on the Breece Hall thing.
Oh, go ahead.
That's what's holding the Jets class back for me. And I hate to be like the running backs don't matter guy, but like the Jets were killing the draft, obviously, and the Jermaine Johnson move was awesome. But why are you trading up but in the second round, like still high value, premium capital, et cetera, for a running back? Like in general, like I disagree with that move from a resource standpoint. When Michael Carter was awesome last year, I mean, it doesn't pass the smell test. Like that's a weird move. That's a like we're just like flying by the seat of our pants move to me.
Every team in the league, or quality team, at least in the running back room in the league right now, has multiple guys there. Yeah, Carter was great, but I like the jump. If you're jumping up to go get him, that means that other teams were interested, and I have no problem.
Or it means you were impatient.
I have no problem even at the running. No, it means that there was like legitimate info that said this guy was not going to be there when you pick, in my opinion. Of course, the information has to be right. But what I'm saying is, if you like a guy, I don't care if he's a running back. Do I want to jump up in the first round to go get a running back? No, I think those days are over, should be over. It would be an embarrassing thing to do at this point.
That's almost what it was. I mean, like it was the top of the second round. Like
I'm saying that if you've identified that this guy can be a real contributor, especially in a league that is offense first, I have no problem with them going up and getting him, especially if they knew that someone else was interested, and it appears to be the Houston Texans were interested. So I don't hate that.
I mean, like, I don't hate it. It's like I don't loathe the pick, but like that holds it back for me from being an all-time like amazing draft class. But I mean,
that's
Sauce
the thing
Gardner,
about even judging these classes, though. Like we don't really know. I mean, it looks. I like that's why I favored these teams that were able to really get value at positions of need, because that means they maneuvered well, either trading up, trading down, and making sure that they were exhausting every option there. And so we'll see, right? Like if Hall is, what does Hall have to do this year for you to be like, okay, that was a good move?
You could lead the NFL in rushing your rookie year, and I think maybe live up to the value of a second round pick. Like where other ways you can spend that. Like that's the thing. Like it's so impossible at that position to live up to the value relative to those picks. And that sounds ridiculous and stupid and hyperbolic, but like that's how valuable those picks are. It's on the like surface, like let alone when you factor in trading for one. So it's a questionable move for me. Like I mean. And whatever. I also thought the headline was funny. I think it was ESPN that like the Jets brass was like refuting praise like that they were like unaccustomed to or whatever. But the other New York team, Pete, can we start spreading the news here? The New York Football Giants. Pete grew up a Giants fan on the streets in Queens, New York. He is Queens Boulevard. What did you think of the shadow of Dave Gettleman?
Judy Batista had an article for NFL.com that basically said that like New York football in general, and we're talking about the downstate New York, because Buffalo will always remind you that they're also a New York team and the other two teams play in Jersey.
I don't understand any of that verbiage, by the way. Like downstate, tri-state, like states are states. Like you can't like amend what the word state means.
Upstate New York and downstate New York, and depending on which borough you're in, and Westchester and Long Island, all of them feel like different states. And that's why people. Like, especially like upstate New York is very different from anything like tri-state area and Long Island. Anyway, so to the New York Giants, I thought that this deserves a mention, and this might have been one of the most key pieces of day one, is the Giants wanted both Thibodeau and Evan Neal, and they really wanted Neal. And what this ended up coming out with Ian Rappaport after. What they decided to do was like take a little bit of a risk here and go and get Thibodeau, because they didn't feel like they could get both unless they did it in this order. And they really didn't want to lose out on Neal, but they evaluated and said, we still think he'll be there at 7, and they were able to get these two players, and projecting them, they could be cornerstones of both sides of the trenches. So I just thought that was really shrewd and definitely worth a mention on our show.
I think the Giants and the Eagles that's what I'm saying. It's annoying. Both had great drafts in different ways. Like I think the Giants had a very measured, patient, long-term approach to their draft. Like it's frustrating to see that they now have like professionals and competent adults in the room leading their charge. Where I think the Eagles had a little bit more of a potential impact now, like a shorter window type of thing. Obviously, trading for AJ Brown kind of accelerates the impact from their draft class. Obviously, he's not a draft pick, but I mean, you get the point. I love what New York did. It was really frustrating to watch them kind of just sit and see Thibodeau fall to them. I can't think of a year where the number one overall pick, I know we haven't even touched on the Jaguars, has been as like doubted or not believed in as much as Trayvon Walker is. It is almost like consensus. And again, like, you know, any fan of any team today is saying like, just give it time. Like we need to see who these players are. Like obviously, but again, like relative to opinions of professionals, it really feels like the Lions and Giants laughed their way to their edge rushers while the Jaguars took Trayvon Walker. Just was kind of a head scratching move.
That is going to be something that is looked at, I think, for the next 3 years, right? Because when you go out on a limb there and you have what every analyst would tell you, every draft analyst would tell you, like some surefire edge guys there, and you end up going with Walker, I mean, people are going to really be looking at that, and they're going to be looking at it under a microscope. And you had all these different smoke signals where the ownership wanted Hutchinson, apparently. Doug Peterson supposedly wanted an offensive lineman, and then you had Balky who wanted a Walker, and there was reports of a power struggle, and then Doug Peterson has to come out and say, no, we were all on the same page. After such a disaster last year with the Urban Meyer situation, you just would have thought, okay, they're going to be all on lockstep, and in a way go the safer route. This feels like a very unsafe route on an organization, especially front office wise, that has to perform this year, or you're going to get questions about that as well.
That's what I'm saying. It feels very opposite of the Giants draft class in that sense. Like the Giants feels very like safe, high floor, not that like low ceiling or anything like that, but it's frustrating. Whatever. But moving on, other classes that are the other class we haven't touched on it, Kansas City Chiefs. It was so frustrating, like unbelievably frustrating to literally watch Sky Moore plummet. And it was so interesting to see both Kansas City and Green Bay not take receivers in the first round. And obviously they kind of got wiped out in the AJ Brown trade. Like, of every mock that, existed, I think everybody in some way, shape, or form saw the Jets taking a receiver and the Saints taking a receiver. I think the Lions, jumping up was a little bit interesting, certainly. But the Titans trading AJ Brown mid, again, I'm sure there were mocks that existed that had that happening, but that was kind of like the wrench, I feel like, that was thrown into everybody's plans. So it was really, I don't love the McDuffie pick, but the Karl Aftis pick to end night one, I thought was incredible. And then again, to watch Sky Moore just plummet all the way down to Kansas City in the second round. I mean, he is going to be incredible. Like, you're a big fantasy guy, Pete. Like, number one overall pick in dynasty leagues. If it isn't Sky Moore, like, what are you doing? What are you doing, seriously?
I find that the Chiefs draft is really interesting when it comes to, we were joking with Kyle, but your Bills, because the Chiefs jumped the Bills to take McDuffie, who they thought the Bills were going to select, and the Bills end up with Elam. I mean, we always talk about how the quarterbacks are in the same class. The Chiefs, in a sense, and this is in the late 20s, called their shot here, and we're going McDuffie over Elam, and now you have maybe their number one AFC rival. Again, I need to see the Bengals back up what they did last year. To me, it's still the Chiefs and the Bills, but it's this cornerback situation. And then you mentioned the Sky Moore pick. Not only I think the Sky Moore pick was nice there, as you said, with him falling to pick 54 there, but they actually traded back. And instead of taking Pickens, they saw Pickens go to the Steelers, and they just held their breath, and Moore was still there. So they called their shot and got a fifth rounder back from the Patriots, and they took a player called Darian Kennard.
So
and
hang on,
they have a need at right tackle.
Just to interrupt you very quickly, like any assessment of the draft that anybody reads for the next week, there's lots of, and they're all fantastic, but there's lots of them that are going to say like, favorite pick for each class. And a lot of writers are going to pick Sky Moore as the favorite pick for the Chiefs, right? Like, I'm sure you've seen that. Darian Kennard, again, relative to value, I think is maybe like in contention for that pick. Feels very similar, and you jumped on his belief train, I think a little bit too strongly, but feels very similar to the Trey Smith pick last year. Like kind of like how did this happen?
Yeah.
How did he fall all the way here? And it was funny last year with the Chiefs needing such replenishment along the offensive line. I thought the Darian Kennard pick was outstanding as well.
Well, what's interesting is they essentially in that trade with the Patriots, they said they traded Pickens, who they could have had at that pick,
for Moore and
Sky Moore and what would be Kennard. And, you know, for those who don't really know about the Chiefs offensive line, they're set from Orlando Brown at left tackle all the way to right guard to Trey Smith. And then they have Andrew Wiley, a veteran, you know, marginal average veteran there at right tackle. They needed someone like this guy to push Wiley. And then immediately, I mean, we talked to this guy Kennard right after. He was very upset that he fell as far as he did. He didn't think he should. And this guy's going to at least push Wiley. I wouldn't be stunned if Kennard becomes that fifth piece of a really good offensive line for Patrick Mahomes. And that's going to be so important because you've now lost the quick dump to Tyreek Hill and watch him go for, you know, they're going to need the additional time to have these plays develop. And so love to see the Kennard pick. And he's already mentioning Trey Smith. So we'll see if it's a back-to-back offensive line type of year for the Chiefs in that sense.
I feel like, and Kansas City didn't, but it does feel like everybody drafted a tight end. You know what I mean? Like, and again, maybe you don't, like, you're not, you know, but like we were so in on our live show at Blogging the Boys on Charlie Kohler, who I mentioned to Kyle went one pick before the Cowboys took Jake Ferguson, the tight end out of Wisconsin. Trey McBride went to the Cardinals. You know, there were tight ends. You know, Jeremy Rucker went to the Jets. There were tight ends. Jelani Woods went to the Colts. Like they were all these just like it was like tight end. Like it feels like this, and everybody talked about that. This was such a tight end rich draft. But I feel like that position is on the rise as well. Like I mentioned, dynasty leagues. That's such an interesting position as a whole. Like as it relates to fantasy, I don't know which one I value the most. Like there are these interesting spots now with tight end. Like that's been a position that has largely just kind of had like 3 or 4 superstars and then a bunch of average dudes. And I do wonder what like the future of this position looks like with all these tight ends sitting on different teams.
Yeah, I find it that there's only a few in the NFL in which, you know, you really look at as weapons / like wide receivers like Darren Waller, Kittle. I've always said that Mark Andrews should be involved in this, and I know Rachel agrees. That and when you have that type of wide
Dalton
receiver
Schultz,
athlete at the at Blake Jarwin at the tight end position, I just think it adds another element to your offense. And what seems to be interesting about that, and you know, you RJ were like alluding like maybe running back should be more like this, is, you know, these guys like Kelsey and Andrews were drafted in the 3rd round. And so I think there's some of these teams out there that are trying to take their shot at getting one of these guys. Mm-hmm. And it seems like they can be diamonds in the rough in a sense. And it's like, we might as well. Like the Chiefs did that last year with a guy named Noah Gray from Duke. Didn't really develop as fast as I think they wanted to, but like, that's why the Chiefs didn't take one, because I think they already feel high on the guy they have. And so you have all these other teams that are trying to get their own Kelsey or Waller, and much like, again, a 1-2 punch in the running back room, I just think it adds another option. Andy Reid in Kansas City, you know, covering him, he loves these multiple tight end sets. There's sometimes a reason, especially when you get close to the goal line, to go heavy. And so, yeah, I just think everyone is taking their shot in the sense of like, let's try to see if we can get our own Darren Waller.
I think it speaks to the evaluation of the position as a whole. Like, you know how people, especially this offseason with all the wide receiver trades, like people are so quick to be like, well, wide receiver is the new running back, right? Like, don't pay a wide receiver, whatever, blah, blah. I would posit that tight end is the original running back. Like I'm fine paying a running back, you know, like within reason if it's Derrick Henry, right? Like if you have this undeniable, you know, different, you know, like exception, that's fine. And that exists at tight end with Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller, Kyle Pitts is seemingly going to be in the mix at some point. Mark Andrews, as you mentioned. But again, tight end's kind of been that position for a while. Like, you know, like there aren't, you know, that many elite tight ends that have existed even in like the 21st century. Like prior to the names that we just listed off, you've got Gronk, you've got Jimmy Graham and Antonio Gates. Am I missing like Tony Gonzalez? Am I missing like another maybe Jason Witten, but he was never like, I mean, I say maybe, like he's a Hall of Famer, but he was never like that kind of tight end. He's like the last Hall of Fame vintage tight end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's the position has evolved, right?
Right. And that's what I'm saying. But like, I think I do think that the entire NFL understands and accepts that premise, and nobody like I look at Dalton Schultz. The Cowboys don't haven't paid him, give him the franchise tag.
I don't know. He's
but what I'm saying is like teams are hesitant to pay the position, and like even like CJ Uzomah, who was awesome last year, like barely got a deal with the Jets. You know what I mean? Like it's just difficult to get paid unless you are a unicorn at the position. I do want to move on, Pete. Just as we kind of slow the episode down and finish things up. I had put this under the category draft classes we don't understand, and I know you didn't look at the notes, so shout out to you.
No, I saw that note. That was a good note.
As I set this up, I'm reminded of a tweet I saw from this a girl that's like a prominent member of Cowboys Twitter. Her name is Cassidy McWaugh, and it was the night that Andrew Luck retired, and she tweeted that night. She tweeted, "Make sure to hug your franchise quarterbacks tight." Because at the time, we were still kind of fresh from Tony Romo's like sudden departure as the Cowboys quarterback. You never know when it can end. You know what I mean? Like you never know when your franchise quarterback's gone, and that's a hard bridge to cross and get over as a fan. And I don't know that I would say that this team is in that space, but this draft was like not quite like shut the book end of one era, but it was definitely the beginning of new times at the Tennessee Titans. Obviously trading away A.J. Brown and very clearly, turning the hourglass upside down on Ryan Tannehill's career, and the sand is starting to fade there. I mean, we are very close to a completely new era of Tennessee Titans football, and I don't know that that's something that everybody was necessarily ready for as far as an overall total reset.
Yeah, when you trade Brown like they did, I think you're admitting, okay, we need to change this entire franchise around because your team is going to look different. You end up taking Willis, and that's clearly going to be a guy that you're going to develop this year.
I think there are a lot of Titans fans who maybe were like braced for one or the other, right? Like, okay, well, we might trade AJ Brown, but like we'll still have Tannehill, we'll still have Derrick Henry, like blah blah, or vice versa. Like, okay, yeah, we might draft Willis, but like they're not trading AJ Brown, so he'll come in, he'll have Brown, he'll have Henry, blah blah blah, and like Brown is gone and Tannehill's still there, but what I think is funny, and I know I'm all over the place with the Titans, but so 2 years ago, the Packers draft Jordan Love. And the conversation is immediately, well, Packers fan, like, how can they not play him, right? Like, as soon as Aaron Rodgers struggles, like, they're going to have to play him, right? I think it's interesting how we feel that way more about established quarterbacks than kind of like ho-hum quarterbacks. Because with Tannehill, there's nobody that's like feeling like his job is threatened. It's like, oh, yeah, well, they're just going to have him sit. Like, why? Why would he not present the same sort of threat that Jordan Love would have, hypothetically to Aaron Rodgers?
Well, I think ideally people have this built-in year where the quarterback can sit. Now, that's not always going to be the case if you're drafting him like in the top 5 picks. I think a lot of times you're going to want to see that guy start right away. Sorry to stats for that sore subject. But this to me is, okay, we're not evaluating him as necessarily a first-rounder. We have other needs. They end up going Burks, which, again, you're taking a rookie, and Tyrann Mathieu in the Kansas City debacle that's kind of happened with him. Like he tweeted out,
new member of the New Orleans Saints, by the way.
Potential is not production, right? In the sense, so you're trading Brown and hoping Burks could, in a way, live up to Brown. And so you're seeing some franchises, they're going young at the position, and others are going in a different direction and saying, we're not going to pay this and we're going to invest in other areas. There is a school of thought here, pay the wide receiver, versus a school of thought of let's be young at the position. And the Titans ended up going into that school of thought. We'll see what ultimately wins out. It might be both in a way. Like Tyreek Hill may be great for the Dolphins. Brown may be great for the Eagles. Maybe he's not. And then the Titans are a more complete team a couple of years from now. We're going to see how these play out. But I just thought it was really interesting. And then with Willis, like I said, and getting back to that quarterback thing, I think what they're going to do is have him sit for a year and see if he can develop in his game and become a pro quarterback, and then maybe push to start next year. And then what happens to Ryan Tannehill? I don't know, but it is a reset. You went from a team, and this is crazy to say with the Titans, who were able to get that bye week, and now there is no chance that they get the bye week. You have a 0% chance of getting the bye week. And
that's what I'm saying.
You're taking a nosedive off that, which is
the number one seed in the AFC is experiencing dramatic change. It's a little bit jarring is all I'm saying. If we look at the rookie quarterbacks specifically, we haven't really talked about them as a subject because the class is a little bit underwhelming. If we assume each one as the starter on their team, which is a big assumption, but if we assume that, Kenny Pickett is the best quarterback in the AFC North? the fourth, right? Like he's last. Like there's
very clearly, yes.
Right. Okay,
yeah.
so he's last, and he's the first one that went off the board. Desmond Ridder is the best quarterback in the NFC South?
Last, right?
I don't think he's last. I mean, like, so obviously Tom Brady is number one. I mean,
Panthers.
Jameis is number two. So, like, even if Sam Darnold, like, maybe I know we're
third.
So, like, I know I said we assume every quarterback is a starter, but if Desmond Ridder is the only rookie quarterback to start in the NFC South, is he not better than Sam Darnold?
I would take any door over Sam Darnold at this point. So you could put any of these guys in Carolina.
Right. So in
Atlanta.
So
and
he's kind of his ceiling is third right now, right? Because of the Sam Darnold factor. And so one of those rookie quarterbacks is third if they both start in the NFC South. But if we look at the AFC South, and if we presume Malik Willis to be the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans, he's the best quarterback of that division. I think there's an opportunity for him to be second, maybe even first, right? Like, we still don't know. The jury's a little bit out on Trevor Lawrence, and we're all willing to give him time, but it's not like the Jaguars gave him a lot of help during this draft. Matt Ryan is a shell of his, like, MVP self in Indianapolis, and they're really talking themselves into that. And, Davis Mills, I'm sorry. Like, I think Malik Willis is in the best.
Indy hater. It is just incredible.
Look, I think Malik Willis is in the best position. Like, I think he's the best rookie quarterback relative to his team's production, and some of that is his team, etc. But, like, I think he's if you rank all the quarterbacks in each of their divisions, I think Malik Willis is the highest right now. I think that's fair.
That's fine, and with the situation and everything. But what is interesting about it, in Tennessee is, could you see him playing this year if it got to be a case where enough time had passed, and maybe, again, we'll see how Tennessee does, but if they are in a position where maybe they're not going to make the postseason because they are changing.
I don't think that there's any way they don't make the postseason because the AFC South is that bad. The Titans' approach to me feels very similar to the Cowboys. Like, we're kind of trying to, like, stay, tread water and also build for the future, but we know we can tread water because our division is so bad. You know, like, and that's lazy, but I mean, it is what it is. Another team whose draft I did not like, the Titans draft, I just didn't understand. It was a little bit weird. One that I am sad about because I really like the head coach. I just love the team. Like, I want them to do well and be well, but it's just like they're not. Like I mentioned, the Jaguars really did nothing to help Trevor Lawrence. What are the Bears doing? I mean, this was very difficult overall. I mean, they improved their secondary. Cool. How is that helpful? I mean, I just that it is not a productive. They're about to burn year 2 of Justin Fields in disgusting fashion.
Well, I think they're going to win or try to win ugly here, but it didn't seem like they helped what's going to be their second year quarterback all that much, especially with the premium picks. And sometimes I think draft classes will tell you what maybe the personnel staff thinks of a certain player, and this would lead you to believe that maybe they're not necessarily think they're ready with that quarterback to win right now, and it's more of a multiple year rebuild. And I thought that was very interesting with Fields. I you have Ryan Poles from the Chiefs coming in. I just wonder if he truly fully 100% believes that Fields is the guy that's going to have them in a position to win right now.
Mm-hmm. Pete, do you have any thoughts on the draft? Final closing thoughts before we get Rachel in here to close out MFW MVP?
I think really quickly we should mention the first 2 picks of the Lions because Aiden Hutchinson fell to them, and they make the easy pick.
Friend of the SB Nation NFL show, Aiden Hutchinson, by the way.
They go up and get who a lot of people without the injury would have said maybe this is a top 5 receiver in Jameson Williams. I don't know if he was so happy to be going to Detroit, but it is what it is. And then they take another edge, Josh. What is Patchell? Am I saying that correctly?
Yes.
From Kentucky in the second round. So they get their ankle biters, which you like. And they sandwich that with Jameson Williams. I wonder what the Lions plan to do at quarterback. They didn't end up going and taking one. So,
just piggybacking off of that, and I know everybody has killed them for this. I read Chad Graff's kind of autopsy on the Vikings draft in the Athletic on Sunday night, and the Vikings traded back with both the Lions and the Packers and allowed Williams to go to Detroit and Christian Watson to go to Green Bay. I mean, I don't think you should operate your NFL team in future defense of the memes. That's a stupid way to put it. But But like if they're getting burned by these two receivers, like any time that either one of these receivers burns or scores on this team specifically, which the likelihood of it is high, but given that they're division rivals, it will be this like Vikings Twitter will be this constant like way to go, like this is your fault, you trade, like, and I think that's weird. Like that's a weird thing to do and way to operate. I don't know. Like, I also was not a fan of what the Vikings did. It was a very suspect draft overall.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't have any strong takes on that, but I can see what you're saying with that point.
Rachel, if you would grace us with your presence now, you are the clubhouse leader with one vote, a big vote for MF double MVP today. Who would you like to vote for? Or actually, before that, what are your thoughts on the draft? What team did you like? What team did you not like? Who do you hate? Who do you love?
Of course, I loved my Baltimore Ravens pick.
Our Ravens.
All of them, start to finish. Our Ravens. Okay, yes. Start to finish. They were really, really strong. So I got to go with the Ravens. I also loved what the Jets did. Can't be mad at them at all. But at the same time, I do feel somewhat, I agree with what RJ said. This is my vote. This is my vote for MF double MVP. I have to give it to RJ. I side with what you said about running back Breece Hall when you're talking about like positional value, trading up for running back. I got to agree with RJ, so I'm going to give him the award for today.
Rachel, that means for the first time in Monday Football Monday history, we have a MF double MVP. You and I share the award today. Kyle Barber voted for you. You so generously voted for me. That means the only person that is a mainstay here on Monday Football Monday who is not MF double MVP today is Pete. Rachel, what do you want to say? I will let you speak on behalf of both of us. We both won the award today.
We made it through NFL draft season. It's been a long time coming, but we made it through. Thank God. I am happy that it's over. You guys did phenomenal coverage leading up to it, and job well done.
Obviously, I don't agree with the picks, but congratulations to you guys.
Pete, well, what are your thoughts as, again, the only person on the show who didn't win MF double MVP today?
Well, look, I have a lot of the MF double Ps in my trophy case already, and with that being said, I think sometimes you got to do something that's called share the wealth. And I have no problem with that. I need you guys to have good self-esteem each and every Monday, Football Monday. And I know that now next week's show will be even better because of that. So I like it for the show.
Spoken like a true loser.
Do I completely agree with the results? I don't. I would have voted somebody else.
Rachel, congratulations to us. A big thank you to Kyle Barber. A big shout out to the Baltimore Ravens. And just because I feel like it, a big shout out to the, to the state of Iowa. That's a good time to be Iowa. I don't know. So congratulations to Iowa. Pete, give us a Frank Sinatra tune and send us home.
I'd say, the Frank Sinatra tune.
Actually, okay, Pete, let me do this. Sing anything you want in the most Iowa voice that you possibly can. Go ahead.
I'm going to refuse to do this. Iowa's a nice neighboring state of Missouri. So congratulations to Iowa for their mention here. And listen, you guys have a great day.